All right, guys, my name is Dr. Sharnael Wolverton, and I am very excited about this discussion today about the golden age. I have a brand new guest here with us, and then we have a returning guest. And the subject is kind of near and dear to me, the golden age, because it was kind of a download that I got about a year ago, and I talked about it with Laura Eisenhower and some others on a couple videos, and now I'm kind of seeing some stuff come to fruition. So before we get started, I just want to remind everybody you can go to drsharnael.com. There's all kinds of books and workshops, and you can get a biofeedback scan or a soul audit or consultation or outcome mapping. Yeah, my podcast is every Thursday at 7. I'm sorry, at noon. It used to be at 7, at noon Central Time. And please do all the things like share and hit the like and do all the comments and let us know where you're from. That's one thing I'm always curious about is whoever's watching, like, where are you from? Where is my audience? Like, I'd love to know who you are and where you're from. So if you could put that in the comments, that would be great too. But I want to give a little introduction to Laura Van Tyne, who's new with us. And then, of course, Sherri has been with us. Welcome back, Sherri.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. Before we get started, can you guys just share a little bit about who you are and what you do before we kind of get on this topic?
You go first, Laura.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, I used to be a middle school teacher, and now I do. My life took a big left turn, or right turn, however you want to look at it. But I was a public school teacher for many years, and then one of my kids woke up exceptionally psychic at the age of 6, and I had to figure out how to fight what I'm going to categorize in general as the demons. These dark entities invaded our house. And I stopped teaching to figure out how to save my family's soul. And it was not for the faint of heart, that journey. But looking back, I know why the light side let it happen. It's so I can do what I do today. And that is help people in similar situations. That unseen energetic world impacts us, whether we believe it or not.
Yes. Wow. Cool. And Sherri, you have quite a background, and tell us where you came from and what you're doing now, and tell them everybody about your school and your animal work and all of that.
Oh my gosh, I'll do the super abbreviated version. Sorry, now my dog's barking. I was a registered veterinary technician. I'm so sorry. This is why I don't normally have them in my room when I'm recording something. RVT, so animal nurse, focus on animals, learn energy healing for animals. Then I morphed into energy healing for animals, and then into animal communication, started working with people, hypnobirthing practitioner, started helping women have more natural, peaceful births using self-hypnosis and understanding the autonomic nervous system and how all that blends together. Through that, I started attracting parents. And then through that, I started attracting non-verbal, labeled autistic and ADHD children. And they came to me to help me communicate with their children because they weren't speaking. And that just morphed into so many other things. So now I do a lot of work with psychic children, labeled children, and I also work with adults every day doing soul readings and just kind of intuitive guidance and helping them through their journey. And then I have Aramis Creative Learning Center, which is an alternative education platform with the intention of creating in-person centers all over the world for children to learn in a safe environment that's self-directed and family-oriented. New earth education.
Oh, wow, that's a mouthful for sure. Awesome. Well, about a year ago, I was driving down the road and all of a sudden heard golden age. I had never heard that phrase before. When I stopped, I actually sent it to my friend Laura Eisenhower, different Laura. And I was like, what is, do we know anything about all of this? And I was Googling, and, it's a thing. It's a real thing. And about maybe an hour later, I was driving and I came up to like a T in the road at a light, coming up this hill, and right across the way from this like dead end was a nursing home, and there was a big sign that said the golden age. I was like, okay, now it's following me everywhere. Like it was in my field. And I just started seeing golden age, golden age, golden age, that reticular activating system that all of a sudden, the synchronicities, it's in the field and now it's just coming, coming, coming. And so we know with these recent elections, there's some talk about that with our new 47. And then also working with David Oates, who is doing some reverse language. He's a reverse language expert. He is actually hearing in reverse speech a lot about the golden age here recently. So, all of that being said, the other day I had reached out to Sherri about doing something with her. We start talking, and then lo and behold, I go to her page, and there she is talking about the golden age. And now I see Journey of Truth is talking about the golden age, and I'm like, what is going on with the golden age? So I would love to hear kind of how you got into that realm and what it means to you.
You go ahead, Laura.
We are at a point where humanity is shifting. And I do believe that we were at a crossroads just a few weeks ago as to the directionality of what could be. And I was seeing two distinct different timelines. I am very grateful we're on this timeline because this is the golden age timeline. This is the age where we can, if you want to call it the matrix, whatever you want to call it, those mind controlling elements that are really wreaking havoc on soul health and the health of humanity are starting to become lifted, and people are starting to see what is happening and also what our potential is. We no longer need to sit in the confines of these rules and laws and policies, these governmental policies that really aren't for our greater good, but we get to break free and understand what is to become of humanity. And you mentioned for number 47, I used to be a teacher. And in fact, I taught at the college level. I taught the history of American education. Our founding fathers never, ever intended for our educational system to have a federal stamp of approval. It was always to be at the local level. Once it hit the federal level hard and heavy, we had Common Core and No Child Left Behind and standardized testing, and everything just went downhill actually pretty fast. And so now we're going to start seeing a reversal of these policies. And whether you like politics or not, politics exists in all dimensions. The higher realms, the lower realms, the mortal realms, there's politics there. So I'm very excited about what this potential gets to be for us with the golden age.
Yeah, I love that. For me, I was hearing golden age through my daughter when I was channeling her before she was born a while ago. I mean, she's 10 now. I was channeling her about a year before I got pregnant, and she kept talking about the Great Awakening and this golden age. And I was really intrigued by it back then, but I didn't quite understand what it meant. And I think over the years, I've just learned a lot more. And I think we interchange some of the terminology, right? Because Great Awakening and the Aquarian Age, and what else? The Grand Rising, all of it means the same. They're all the same thing. So when I titled my book last year, Starseeds and the Great Awakening, the subtitle was something like 3D interference, healing the soul, and shifting humanity into the golden age. And I kept trying to figure out if that was the word I wanted to use in the subtitle. I was like, well, I already used Great Awakening. The goal was in the Aquarian Age. I was thinking through the Grand Rising of humanity was another option I had on the paper, but I just kept kind of focusing on the golden age. And then I didn't think about it again. And I honestly didn't think about it again until recently. And when Trump started, are we allowed to say, I don't know what words, trag words we're allowed to say, sorry. When he started talking about it, and I was like, oh my God, he's talking about it now. And then like Sharnael said, I started seeing it everywhere. And the message that I got was, because now it's like on the bumper stickers. I mean, people are going to have tattoos saying it soon, it's in there. But I think that's wonderful because what it shows me is that it's now part of the collective consciousness. We have now manifested it. And we are, like Laura said, I think there was touch and go as to what timeline we were on. And there was these timeline wars occurring. And when that whole election period occurred, we did shift And I do think we solidified into that golden era, that golden age timeline, and we are really anchored into it at this point. So now it's more about what does it mean moving forward, I think is up to interpretation. And I think how do we maintain it and how do we stay in it? And that's kind of, I feel like, the direction that we're headed right now.
Love it. Well, I looked it up like while we were talking, just by Webster, or I guess it's Webster, actually Oxford, sorry. It says that often imagery, pastime, peace, prosperity, and happiness. He hankered after a lost golden age. So now we are in the found golden age, apparently. It's also a period when there is a specified art skill or activity at its peak. And, they're using this sentence saying, like, this was a beautiful time of the golden age. The origin comes from Middle English, and it says Greek and Roman poets name for the first period of history having to do with that realm of time. And so it's like maybe a loop here with hopefully better, even more prosperous energy. I mean, you're right, Laura. We could have took another really dark turn. I mean, it's like, how dark can we go? And I don't want to know.
Right.
Maybe I'll be here, and hopefully my generation will be past if there is something that dark. But it took a lot of, I think, prayer and energy and the collective of just maybe bringing back everything to a center or to a balance of where it's been so unbalanced for such a long time. What do you guys think was the determining factor for us to even get on this timeline?
There's been a lot of people waking up. I think we needed the previous 4 years so many other people could get a deeper understanding of what was happening. And it also allowed for, I think, certain institutions to really shift, really figure out what's right, what's not right, what's working, what's not working. This past 4 years, I think, was pivotal in as far as where we get to go. What do we get to do? And you mentioned in your definition of the golden age about the arts. Well, creativity is pure God source energy. And this is why, unfortunately, when we procreate, that's creativity, God source creations, right? So if the dark side could stop that by all sorts of, we're going to call them mutilations, et cetera, it really put us in a deficit, but we were able to overcome that. And I think it was the power of prayer and the power of action, because prayer without action is simply wishing and hoping.
Yeah. I love everything you just said, Laura. And, to give an example of that, I'm going to use the Florida hurricane. So I moved to Florida a couple of years ago. Everybody I talk to, I swear, everyone, I've lived here my whole life. Never have we had hurricanes like this. Never have we had tornadoes like this bad, right? And I'm like, of course, we come here and, but we know, and we don't know for sure, but I believe that because there was a mass exodus from, whether you want to call them blue states or liberal states or whatever, it doesn't even matter. A lot of people chose to leave that because they didn't align with it anymore. And they came to a lot of different states like Texas and Florida for lots of different reasons. And I think that the influx of that caused the expediting or the intensification of certain technology, we'll say, without any code words or keywords, that have created or amplified the weather warfare, right? So how many people, so those big ones that were back to back this year, a couple months back, were quite scary. I mean, I was admittedly very afraid, even though I was on the other coast, because it was the whole state and it was a lot. But so many people around the world, not even in just the United States, Laura hosted a prayer circle. People were hosting prayer circles. People were literally utilizing their innate abilities to neutralize the threat. And I wholeheartedly believe that it worked, because it was nothing anywhere. It was devastating. Don't get me wrong. Both of them had devastation, but the effect that I believe that they were going for did not happen. And I truly believe that it was because it was the power of prayer. Like Laura said, people came together, they unified. And instead of projecting more fear, which is normally what they encourage us to do by watching the news. And then you're sitting there and you're so scared and you're telling each other, I'm so scared. And all of this fear just amplifies it and it makes it happen just like they want. But instead, people were focusing their attention on the positive and it not being that bad, and it worked. So that is a really good example of the power of prayer. And I think that the collective consciousness over the last 4 years, starting before while T was still in office, people started to wake up as a result of the pandemic, and the activations have continued this whole time. And people have gotten to a point, this junction point, where they've made a choice. I am standing in my free will and I'm using my sovereignty, and I do not choose the lower timelines, regardless of their political preference, where they live, how much money they have. It literally doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just their souls making a choice and standing up and saying, this isn't what I want. I want this. So I think that so many people around the world collectively came together and made a choice, and that altered us into the timeline, so much so that there wasn't any amount of risky business, or what is the word, like that they could do to change the results. You know what I mean? There wasn't anything, like it was just too much. So that's what I think. It really mattered what we thought, what we projected. It worked.
Yeah. Go ahead. You're gonna say something?
The dark side got a little greedy, didn't they? With 2 back to back. Had they have had one and waited a few weeks or closer to a month, would the power of prayer have been that powerful, right?
Right.
So the dark side gets greedy, and this is their fatal flaw, and this is our opportunity to rise to the occasion, to understand what it means to have a healthy soul and what this golden age means and the era that we're about to move into.
Yeah, so I'm going to add my 2 cents here. I agree with everything that you guys are saying, and I'm going to add a couple other things. Well, maybe 3 things. So number 1, the power of real media was a big play in this. And I mean, I think people are so over the mainstream propaganda project, the MLK, situations, all the projects that are going through the air and the streams and people and la, 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 that, since the thing happened 4 years ago, that was a catalyst for all of these people to get podcasts. And it didn't happen overnight, but there are thousands and 10,000s of podcasts more than there were 4 years ago. And I know that during that time 4 years ago, there was a lot of births of podcasts, and now they've grown and a lot of people quit. But I was watching a little clip that came through about the other side that were saying how they were complaining, saying, oh, well, they lost because they didn't have a Joe Rogan, in their back pocket. And I wanted to start laughing because I was like, actually, you did have a Joe Rogan. His name is Joe Rogan. And he was on your side until you got weird and got stupid. And then he decided like that was enough. And so he's had all these amazing people that I've even, spent time watching and just learning about these people that are given a platform to see and hear things that aren't going to be on the media because they're not going to want to show you that. And then Candace Owens and some of her stuff with her people and her videos about the book Chaos. I don't know if you've seen those, and just the whole history of the one who was running besides 47 and her background. And Judge Brown was very much alive and well when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated and all the CIA stuff. So there was so much disclosure that came out, even more so than 4 years ago. I mean, there was a lot that came out over the last 4 years, but I feel like this was a huge catalyst of people breaking out with more information and it being a little bit easier to listen to because they've heard it. Maybe now they've heard it so many times that even when a Joe Rogan is saying it or a Candace Owens is saying it, we've all been talking about this for a decade or longer. But it's almost mainstream within the podcast. You know what I mean? Like some of the podcasts have become mainstream. And when they're saying it, like I've talked to people who are like, oh, well, did you hear blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, yeah, I've been saying that for a decade. And they're like, oh, well, now he's saying it. It's like, then there's more emphasis. It's got to be true if Tucker Carlson's saying it, or Robert Kennedy is saying it. So that was a biggie, I think, as far as literally shifting the energy of what we're putting our attention to, what we're hearing, what we're ingesting, and able to integrate that a little more. For people who couldn't integrate that before, and it was like, no, sorry, go back, not resonating. But the other thing, what going back to the greed and the overplay is, they overplayed their hand a little bit with the Diddy situation. And Jamie Foxx got poisoned, and then he came and he went to the feds and told on him, and there was so much disclosure about this whole Mockingbird situation. And they may not call it that, but in the past, when they've used celebrities to do their bidding, and politicians and sports people and music people and actors and actresses, it's amazing when I go look at their Instagram how in the comments literally people are just telling them exactly, I mean, like everybody, it's so negative. They're saying like, we know what you did and la la la, it's like, you didn't see that years ago. People are actually getting that this is not like a joke. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is actually happening. And again, these things went mainstream too. And every time they would have like an actor or an actress, actress or whoever, politician, sports person, whatever, get up there and get on a podium and endorse. I mean, you can tell they kind of didn't want to. Number one, the body language and the backward speech was like, oh God, I have to do this or else. But also, people were like not buying it, and they were paid to do it. And that was exposed, that they had to do it because of blackmail and or because of big amounts of millions of dollars. Like Oprah was paid $1 million to do it. Well, Hulk Hogan was paid 3 lottery tickets and a hamburger. So, I mean, they're not getting paid to do stuff. They're doing it out of their heart of authenticity, of actually wanting America to be in a better place. So those two things. And the last thing I'm going to say is the squirrel, I think, was the cherry on top.
Yeah.
Do not mess with animals.
No.
That was such an overreach. That was such an overboard thing. And it came last minute, just like the Rogan thing. But man, you mess with a little baby squirrel. They did not encounter what this was going to do to like even mainstream media is messing with a little squirrel like that. So what are your thoughts on all these things?
They even made the squirrel into a meme coin. You can buy it on crypto.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I saw it the other day. It's like, wow. But you're right, though. They got greedy. And I heard a podcast, I forget who it was, like, okay, so this means Oprah's worth like 20 Lizzos, and like they're monetizing the people. It's like, wow, that's about right. But they do. And people are sick of it. They're tired of being manipulated. And through this, I think with the jab stuff going on down the years, it was designed to separate the soul from God, to placate us so that we wouldn't get to this moment in time. They worked really hard, but it has not succeeded.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I'm sorry, but it's funny to me that they're using Joe Rogan, and they did say the same thing about Elon Musk, like, oh, like it's not fair. And I'm like, it's not fair. You guys have every celebrity in Hollywood at your disposal. Now there are some that are coming that have been outspoken about how they feel, and they're far and few between. But I'm like, you have every celebrity, every rapper, all these musicians, sabotaging the minds of people all over the world. Like, so Joe Rogan is suddenly important. You never cared about him before, but this one person is more relevant than all of the celebrities in Hollywood. Like, that just goes to show the level of immaturity that they had and how they were freaking out, and they were just looking at anything to say it was unfair. It just goes to show who they are, what they're about. That's all. And people are waking up to it, and people are not. The programming is not working anymore, and they're seeing through the illusion, and they're like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. So we're seeing a lot of that too.
Yeah. It just cracked me up when I'm like, you did have a Joe Rogan. His name is Joe Rogan. You gave him up. You turned him. But two things. Andy Schultz, is a comedian who had Trump on, and he just had on Charlemagne, who has been very outspoken about other people. And Charlemagne actually said two things. Number one, he was like, well, remember when they said all these things were going to happen and there was going to be a dictatorship, blah, 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 blah. It's like, it's been days now. Like, when does this kick in? Like, what? Like, I'm not seeing all the things. And but the other thing, when he was on there, he mentioned something, just something really derogatory, and how he's a racist, 47, and oh, he had the most racist campaign, and blah 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 blah, and all this stuff. And Andy literally point blank, there was just the two of them in an interview. He looked over him. He's like, dude, come on, really? Like, no one believes that anymore. And I just thought it was hilarious because he just called them out in front of everybody and just was just like, dude, for real, like, wake up, And you could tell that he kind of was thinking about it. He was just like, yeah, you're saying this, and yeah, maybe you're right. But the other thing I was going to say is the Elon issue. I know there's a lot of people who don't really like him or think, I've looked at his scalar waves. I've looked at his reverse speech. I've looked at a lot of things. And yeah, there may be a time that could be scary if someone got their hands on technology and like took it away, like they've done Royal Rife, and a lot of the other, Tesla, with the weather stuff, and, lots of different things that they've done in the past where they've taken things from the scientist. But everything that I've seen with scanning and all the research I've done is like, he's actually pure hearted, and that he's really seeking something really positive and pure out of this. And, I know you work with people with autism and Asperger's and all of that. And I'm curious, have you ever met someone with those kind of abilities, or I guess you could call them, that was mean and pure-hearted? Like, because I haven't. I've never met a pure heart, an evil someone on the spectrum.
No.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go right ahead. Go right ahead.
I was just going to say, I've met a few that are in their 20s that have been abused so much by society. They have tapped into the shadow side a little bit, and they're struggling. They're kind of on the fence of good and evil, and really understanding what choices they're making and things like that. They're really struggling. But I've never met anybody, and I've met a lot with Asperger's and labeled. I don't like to use the labels, but that are labeled as such. And I think that they are so misunderstood and so bullied by society because of the fact that they, specifically speaking Asperger's, they're very left brain. They're very out of tune and touch with human emotion and connection and kind of how we do things here, because they're so focused and driven and like hyper focused even on their intelligence and what it is that they're here to contribute. So they're not really seeing anything else. And that makes them a target, because they don't have the eye contact and they don't have the emotion, and they don't understand social cues and all of this. But that doesn't mean that they're evil or there's something wrong with them. They're not, and at the same, they don't have the same skills set as others.
So an interesting story, and this is just 2 data points. I worked with on a national council for a parent advocacy group. And then I also, one of my clients is a social worker, and she got demoted into the transgender social work. And I asked them both, what percentage of the people that you're servicing have Asperger's or autism? And the person who is on this national board said almost 100%. Then I asked my client, totally different resources, totally different data points. She says, you know what? I don't know, but it's a high number. Let me get back to you. She went and did her case count. 100% of her clientele between ages of 18 and 25 had Asperger's or autism, and they were in that transgender program. So it tells you that they have an asset that is that dark side is trying to curb. And that is pure of heart, pure joy. So it is diabolical on a good day.
You can't manipulate them generally, and they don't want people that are uncorruptible, unmanipulatable. So they have to figure out how to sabotage them in a different way. I mean, it is pretty smart if you think about it. I mean, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and they I think that this group of people tends to have a little bit more telepathic abilities. So they don't need those skill sets of those social mores and those social cues, or they don't think they do, or they're not as needed for them, because I think they have a lot of telepathic abilities to them as well.
Interesting. Well, I've kind of been like ODing on Elon. I've been watching like anything I can get my hands on because I'm fascinated by his story, his mother, his father, his sister. I mean, his brothers, and he doesn't have a sister. Just some of them, like stories about when he grew up, and he was very much bullied, like to the point of almost being beaten to death in front of his brother Kindle, or Kimball, and like his dad, I guess, was pretty abusive, and that he, even as a 2 and 3-year-old, would step in, try to protect his mom from being hit, and the brothers would get on the legs of him, only being 4 and 5 and 3 years old, and beating on their dad to try to make him stop hurting his mother. And I mean, he grew up in a very tragic home, and these interviews, when he's asked about his home growing up, his face and everything, and his eyes, like he is feeling. And one of the interviews that I saw was an ex-wife who was, I think, the mother of many of his kids, and I think his first wife actually. And she said that she's never met anyone who felt so much, that he just had so much feeling and so much emotion, and that he did make eye contact to the point where people were maybe uncomfortable. I know that some of the people I've heard that have interviewed him, they're like, he just looked straight at me, it was just really uncomfortable. But one funny story that she had said was that, they went to, I think, a lunch or a dinner, and then he was like, well, you want to go, I think it was breakfast, and they were like, do you want to have lunch? And they're sure. So they had lunch, and then later he called and said, you want a dinner? And then it was like the next day they did the same thing. It was very obsessive, like, whatever. And then he said, hey, well, you want to come back to my hotel and watch videos on rocket ships? And she was like, okay, thinking maybe there was going to lead to something else. And she said, sure enough, she went over to the hotel, and they watched 2 hours or 3 hours about rocket ships. And it was very literal and very his intention. And one big thing that they talk about a lot is his obsessiveness with work, and just how much he works, and how passionate he is about all the things, to the end of having to borrow money to put on, like, putting everything before, even family, to borrow money to make these things take off, and to go and to grow his business. And he, in one interview, he even says, businesses are like children. You have to feed them, you have to nurture them, all of that. So I know that maybe the stereotypical thing is no eye contact, no emotions, but in his case, it seems to be different. And maybe all cases are different, but he just comes across very pure-hearted to me. And I'm really enjoying him having not only the celebration of people celebrating him finally, instead of, just dogging him. I mean, even his mentors didn't like him and said bad things about him when he started doing rocket ships and things like that. But he's went through some pretty hard times, and to now see him on the other side, and be able to work in this capacity and help so much. I mean, he was a big determining factor in Pennsylvania, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He was up there nonstop. And then the whole lottery thing. I mean, what do you guys think about all that?
When you listen to him talk, you can hear the inflection of joy at the end of his words. So the next time somebody listens to him speak, listen for that little inflection of joy. I find it fascinating. And he has been through a lot. And you know what? He means business too, which is admirable. When he wanted to move the Twitter servers to Texas, or from California to Texas or whatever, they're like, oh, it'll take 6 months, or it'll take this long. So he's on a plane Christmas Eve. I heard him tell this story on some show or whatever. He told his pilot, turn it around. He landed. He went to the servers and he cut the cords. He's like, okay, now move them. Brilliant. Just brilliant.
Yeah, I think it was him and his brother. They were like, well, can we do this? It's like, because they were going to just keep blowing him off because that would mean no jobs.
Right.
And
Right.
he was like, no, I'm the owner. And guess what? This is how it's going, you know?
I think that's the thing about people that are labeled with Asperger's too, is they don't do what everyone else does. They beat their, what's that thing you tune to the beat of your own drum, or whatever that saying is. Like, you tell them no, they're going to do the opposite. You know, they're a little bit rebellious, and that's what I do like that about Elon. He's very passionate about what he does. He's not going to take no for an answer. And what I do respect about him as a professional and just as a person in general in the public eye is his transparency. I love that he tells everyone what he's going to do, and then he does it, and then he asks for people's opinions, and he lets them give their opinions, whether he likes it or not, or does anything with it. I think he genuinely cares and wants to know what people want. He's letting everyone know what he's going to be doing within this Doge branch that he's now going to be running, and what people, and he's like, I'm going to post what I'm doing, keep us in check. You know, I admire people like that. So neither one of the three of us know him personally, so we can't say for sure, but we go off intuition and gut. And, you know, we just have to we're always going to keep ourselves on our toes on everybody, no matter who they are. But I think that he has good intentions for the most part.
And transparency is a part of that golden age.
Yeah.
That transparency is so critical to the golden age that we're coming into, and he's stating it.
Yeah, it's basically transparency, authenticity, you know, being true, letting people know, having accountability. You know, you mentioned that he has this little bit of joy in his voice. The opposite is also true when you said like he means business. When that the very famous interview that maybe you guys have seen, because they looped that around quite a lot when they were trying to blackmail him and basically take away advertising and do all this stuff. And he was like, you know what? Try to give me money. Try to manipulate. Try. And he was like, go F yourself. You know. And he was like, what? And he's like, go F yourself. Go F yourself. Go F yourself. Go. Am I being clear? You know, he was pretty very yeah. But let's be clear about that. You know. So I think it can go both ways. Where if he is adamant and feels justification about something that's true to his heart, he's going to stand up and he's going to do the right thing. And I mean, that's just, you know, my 2 cents.
Well, it's critical, absolutely critical to the golden age, is speaking the truth, speaking all of these elements, getting across the finish line with honesty and integrity. And we get to see what that looks like now on a global scale.
Absolutely.
So there's been a lot of talk over the next little bit of time here about all the different things that can happen before the 20th of January. What can we do, or can we do anything besides pray and, you know, see the outcome in a good space? Or, you know, I mean, I don't know what you guys have heard. I think with the golden age, it's hopefully we can stay on this timeline, you know, but maintaining it, like, talk about that.
Yeah, I did a video on this recently on my channel right after the election, a couple of days later, because I was like, we need to get ahead of this. And I wanted to at least give my opinion, or where I am, my perception of what's happening, and how people can embrace the golden age, because we have a lot of collective PTSD, a little bit, being in the third dimension and all of this stuff that's been done to us in the programming. It's natural for us when something good happens to think, oh my God, something bad's coming up next. And there are infiltrators, even in the truther community, and there are memes, and they're still putting on my Facebook page, I'm seeing the next hurricane that's coming. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it's going to be Thanksgiving. Like, give it up. Like, but they're constantly going to instill fear the best they can. So if they lost this election, what they're working on is trying to implant suggestive scenarios and events that could occur to get people ramped up in fear, because they know that's how we create our reality. We're the creators. So if we are in fear of what's going to happen next, or we're listening and feeding into what we're hearing, which I'm not listening to any of it, then we can then create it. And my suggestion in my video was, perhaps the golden age, or the timeline that we find ourselves in now, or we're anchoring in, could it be that there is nothing coming, and we're so used to thinking or expecting something bad to occur, why don't we just try to say, hey, this is a really good thing, and let's keep it that way and not project or help create something that maybe isn't meant to be in this timeline. Maybe it was meant to be in another. Maybe there was an alternate timeline where he did win and there was backlash, but we're not seeing it right now. So people are tuning into what they want to see, and the frequency that is matching them. So I'm not resonating with any of that. So I feel like I'm tuning into a resonance of nothing happens and everything is smooth. But that doesn't mean out of 6 billion people, we don't know what everyone else is tuning into or what they're thinking or what they're worrying about. So I feel like if we all take responsibility for our thoughts and what we are co-creating, the energy that we're putting out, it matters significantly, just like the hurricane situation. I'm not saying that nothing's going to happen bad. I'm not saying at all we should sit back and, get really comfortable and let our guard down. Of course not. But part of the golden age is trusting in ourselves. That's what it's about. Trusting in our sovereignty, trusting in the choices that we make, not consenting to anything that's not in alignment with the collective highest good. And then holding the space of that. So I think this could be a potential test of us of how we're going to handle the next few weeks to the next few months. And what is it that we're going to project or amplify? What is it that we want to see? We can help create it. So that's kind of what I've been coaching people on. I'd love to hear, Laura, what your thoughts are.
I agree with that. And I'm also cautiously optimistic. So being prepared, for example, right? No matter what we do in life, we need to be prepared for the unforeseen circumstances. Maybe it's having the appropriate amount of, food rations or whatever that is. And yeah. And it's not out of fear, but it's out of just, common sense, because I do think you're looking at a group that got smaller and smaller and smaller. And for lack of a better word, they lost. And their behaviors are such that they are having temper tantrums. So one of the politicians that I worked closely with, who's one of the four good ones in the United States, but I'm only half joking. She did not win the race, and she should have. And that far left, they're just being cruel and vicious about this. Why? Because they're having temper tantrums. They're upset about the bigger races. So they're taking it out on the local races. And this is part of their programming. They're so entrenched in this programming. I don't know if they can break free from it. It's not my job. It's not my responsibility. But it's something to be aware of, because they are programmed to the hilt. And those people that have been programmed previously that are waking up, it's really important that you don't fall into the guilt, shame, and blame aspect of what you fell for, because we were all fed lies. And when we can eradicate the guilt, shame, and blame, like, oh my gosh, I got the jab and I did this and I did that, you know what? But now I know better. This is karma in action. This is, getting balance back into our life. So anybody out there who feels bad about how their prior belief systems, belief structures, realize you're blessed to get out of it. Yeah. Don't feel bad about it. You won the lottery, period.
Yeah, I remember coming out of religion and just, the depression of realizing how wrong I was for so many years about so many things. And then just having that feeling too of like, oh my God, well, if I'm wrong about that, maybe I'm wrong about everything, and just like wondering like, what's really true? Yeah. I remember saying that all the time of like, what's really true? Like, what is true? Is anything true? Like, just being turned upside down, with the apple cart of my life at that time of, I went through this whole thing about what marriage is and the science of that. And I was like wrong about, just so many things. And so, I think a lot of people that this has been a catalyst in this last few weeks of, lots of exposure to different podcasts and people, maybe kind of on the fence coming through. And they may be dealing with some emotional parts of it. And like you said, it is a good idea for us to just try to hold space for them, to love them, to not be judgmental, to help them along, and there could be more. And you mentioned something about the numbers. I actually think there's way more than what they even lost with. I think that there's way, I think they try to amplify what isn't to whatever level they can, and then use all the media to just like bombard it, to make it appear way bigger. So they feel like they're in the majority when they're really just not in the majority.
And it made a lot of other people just keep quiet because their behaviors are so shocking. It's like, whoa, right? And so I think a lot of us, I mean, I've had certain realizations for about 20 years now. But it was like, whoa, I have to, this is crazy town over here. And yet I'm supposed to be the crazy one, right? And how do you navigate that?
Yeah. Right. What's the thing about a conspiracy theory only lasts like what, 6 months or what? I mean, name one.
Yeah.
Name one that we weren't wrong about. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, we're so great, because I lived a whole decade and a half being wrong of a lot of things. And so I could be wrong now, you know, and I'm very open to the fact that I could be absolutely wrong and that there's way more to the story. And usually if people do ask me opinion, I always preface it, well, I think this, I may change my mind in 5 minutes, giving more evidence, but this is where I am right now, because it's like
a point in time, right? Information based on a point in time.
Yes.
And when we can learn how to pivot that information on a basic point in time, it gives us a fluidity and it keeps us healthy on so many levels.
Yes, I agree. Well, any final words? And then also, please just tell us where people can find you guys. And I know you guys have books and all of that. And everyone can find me at Dr. Sharnael and all the social media stuff and books and workshops and the podcasts and all of those things. But tell people where they can find you guys.
Go ahead, Sherri.
You can find me at sherrydivband.com, aramiscreativelearning.com, 2 different websites, Instagram, Facebook. My books are all on Amazon. Some of them are on Barnes & Noble. We have a new children's book coming out anytime now. I'm like so excited. We were supposed to publish last year at this time, and for a lot of reasons we weren't able to. It doesn't matter, but now we are ready. And it's about chakras. So it's our next children's book, Divinely Guided, about chakras. So I'm so excited about that. That's the new thing. And I think that's pretty much everything.
And you can find me at The Karmic Path, Laura Van Tyne, thekarmicpath.com. And it's about creating a healthy soul, if we talk about our financial health, our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, what about our soul health? It all ties together. It's all interwoven, interrelated. And I've got some books out. I published actually 2 books this year. Battle with the Dark Side, My Journey from Teacher to Exorcist is the latest one. And that's kind of like a little bit of a tell-all about like, how did I go from a middle school teacher to an exorcist? But I do more than just that as well. That's just kind of, I deal with the down and dirty. And I actually had a client the other day who was their Arcturian standing on each side of her. And they're like, you need to give Laura this message. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird, but different, right? And the message was, when you work in the light all the time, it's hard to be in the dark at the same time. And there's a lot of us out there. And I want to thank that client and those Arcturians for that message. It was very timely and very on point.
Yeah. Yeah. How does a candle be? And I mean, it's in the dark, but it's not the dark. So interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate your time and your work and your service to humanity and your friendship. And look forward to getting to know you better, Laura. And of course,
likewise.
Big love to you, Sherri, and all your work. And thank you so much, you guys. We're here every Thursday at noon Central, and we have a lot of really cool shows coming up. So stay tuned. And you guys go check out all of their websites and their videos and all of their things that they're doing too. And I know you'll get a lot out of it. So thank you guys again. And you guys have a wonderful evening, and I will see you around. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.